Imagine falling in love with a vacation rental so much that you buy it.
And I couldn't turn it down. It was such a good deal. That house had just such incredible feng shui. It was super special.
That's exactly what Dre did, and the story only gets better.
It's rewarding and sharing my design, since the design was a part of the experience for my guests. And I'm a very big attention to detail person.
How could a simple cowboy tub or vintage record player elevate a guest's stay? Dre shares the details that make all the difference.
So anything from a literal physical element in the house from the charger to a renovation. But I think on the flip side, communication and like personal hands-on, attention.
I'm 30-time Airbnb superhost Jason Muth. I worked in the media business for over 25 years, and in 2016, we started our Chapter 2 using short-term rentals. Since then, we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our homes. And now we're here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, here's the show. All right, Rory, we're here with another discussion with a fantastic designer. I know we've had a couple designers on Smart Stay Show of late, but we've never had anyone quite like this.
I know, and I like to be an amateur designer when we work on our properties. Just because it's a creative outlet, but we're talking with the pros here, and I'm really excited to see and hear what she has to say.
Welcome, Dre Shapiro, known as Dre in the design world. What's going on, Dre? How are you? Welcome to the Smart Stay Show.
Thank you, Jason and Rory.
Yeah,
I'm great.
Your designs are out of this world. You have this gorgeous property that I'm staring at on my screen in Joshua Tree, and I've never been to Joshua Tree. I have friends that have properties there, and the home that you have there on Airbnb looks exactly like I envision really top properties in Joshua Tree. So I can't wait to hear more about the design process of, what it took to actually put that all together, and how your creativity, is infused with being a great host, because it's also a guest favorite, and you have a 4.94 rating with this property. So you're obviously doing something right. But the first thing you're doing right is you, like me, we are New Yorkers. Yeah.
Yes.
We were just there a couple. We live in New England. Rory and I are up in Newburyport, Mass, and I've been in New England for well over half my adult life. But you always have that New York side of you, and I know you're on the West Coast, but you must bring some New York sensibilities to the folks in California, right?
I think so, 100%. I mean, once you get that New York, like you said, in your blood and your bones, I think it's a more of a kind of attitude and a little bit more determination and aggression.
Yes.
A controlled aggression, which helps in business, because the pace on the West Coast is definitely slower.
I find myself driving differently when I drive in Manhattan, versus, and I grew up in the suburbs, and, people in Massachusetts aren't exactly the best drivers, but, like when I go into Manhattan, you're putting on your battle gear to be driving through that city. And I know you've spent some time in Manhattan. We were just talking off camera. You mentioned that you were in the Hamptons for a while because you're a surfer, and now you're surfing out west where the weather is a lot warmer. I don't blame you for doing that.
Exactly.
But, so how did you get involved with Airbnb and short-term renting properties out?
Yeah. So I got inspired by a good friend of mine who has a property in Yucca Valley right next to Joshua Tree. I spent an amazing weekend there on a July 4th, and she was sharing how she was renting it out, making money, was paying her mortgage. And I just fell in love with the desert. I'm such an ocean person, as you mentioned, with the surf, but for me, there's an equivalent in some way to like the vastness and the scape. Just really, I felt so good, and it was okay being away from the ocean, surprisingly, because I was still in super addicted mode at that time with surfing. So I just started researching properties. It seemed like a great investment. And then really oddly, incredibly, coincidentally, the property I found was literally next door to my friend. So we're neighbors.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it just, actually that space, which is the Good Ranch, I call the Good Ranch, it's more of a Black themed house, became the money pit. That house is still not ready. That's not the one that's up on Airbnb right now. I had stayed in Joshua Tree for my birthday. I went on a solo trip. I can't remember how old I was, but it was about 10 years ago. And I fell in love with this property, which is now Indio House. And I said to the owner who I met physically, if you ever sell this property, let me know. So maybe 6 months after I bought the one next to my friend, she came to me and said, I remembered. I couldn't turn it down. It was such a good deal. That house had just such incredible feng shui. It was super special. So I bought that one also. And that one was pretty much ready to go. So that one's been up and running for over 7 years, I think it is now. And the other one's still not, but that's how it started.
Rory, Dre is one of the first people I've spoken with who has stayed in a short-term rental and then bought that exact property. Isn't that fascinating?
I mean, it sure is. I know your first entree into short-term renting was you stayed in a short-term rental that my parents owned, and you didn't like how comfortable the bed was, and you just kind of all the changes that you would make. So a couple of months later, you had a short-term rental down the street where you could now be in charge of exactly what happens and exactly how the place was designed.
Yeah, Dre, I've told that story on this podcast before. I don't have to tell the whole thing, but basically it was, down the street from where we were staying, and it was his parents' house that was short-term renting a property next door to where they're now retired. And I think maybe this is why I don't stay in a ton of properties that are on Airbnb, because my brain gets so judgy about what's happening in those properties. And, it happened again this past summer where Rory's sister, my sister-in-law, bought us an Airbnb weekend getaway up into the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And it was a great place. But of course I walked in saying, I'm not going to judge things. I'm not going to judge the operations. And it was the first thing I did when I walked in. I couldn't believe I did that. So
which aspect?
Specifically, they wanted us to take the trash off site. And, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is something that I would never ask my guests in New Hampshire to do. I don't know what the protocol is in Joshua Tree if you have private trash collection. No, you don't do that. But yeah. What are some of the intricacies about operating in Joshua Tree? I mean, again, it's the desert, right?
It is the desert. It's very harsh conditions. I mean, it gets very cold. But more than that, the prevalence is like super high winds, which is a problem. And then, of course, very hot and dry. So those aspects. And then, of course, we have rodents and snakes. There's a rat problem at one of my houses that I've got under control, but there's a lot of problems with rats getting into the hot tub and things like that. It's just constant maintenance. And on adjacent, along with that is that it's very, very hard to get good help out there. It's just this thing that every single person that lives and works out there, they don't respond. And you're kind of stuck. It's like you kind of have to take it. And so I've gone through, I don't know, at least six cleaning people, 12 handymen, 6 contractors. That part's tough. Yeah.
Do you find that the staff do they leave town or do they just stop responding?
They stop responding. They just disappear. It's unbelievable. And even not sometimes just in the middle for no reason. They'll just go MIA and then they'll come back. And they don't even say anything. There's never an apology or an explanation. It's just you just kind of know what you're getting at this point. So I've built up an armor against it. Luckily, my fiance is a builder. So we ended up just finishing this one house ourselves, but we're so busy. That's why it's taking so long. And then I have another friend from LA who's not a typical desert guy and I can trust him, but it's really tough. I have a cleaning lady right now that seems to be on the up and up and has been responsible, but I know even with her at any time, there could be a big problem.
Yeah.
So you just have to learn how to navigate it.
And about treating your people well when you actually get great help. And I'm sure that you do that.
I do. Bonuses
you do it
all the time. Yeah. Lots of bonuses for no reason. Lots of compliments. Just do whatever you can to try to make them, respect you and want to work for you and do a good job.
We operate a co-hosting business in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and it's similar, is that help can be tough. Like when you find really great people to do work for you, it's really important to treat them well, to
Mm-hmm.
maintain their loyalty, and vice versa. I mean, I see it as a two-way street. Like I try to be loyal to the people that we pay, so they could be loyal back to us. And it's always, treating them with respect, getting back to them quickly, paying them immediately. Like just we do everything in our power to do the same exact thing that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And there's other areas here in New England where there's similar problems with staff. Rory, we hear it in New Hampshire all the time. I mean, we've been lucky that we've kind of built up a pretty good Rolodex of who to contact in situations where we need someone to contact, as I'm sure that you've done. And if you're listening to this podcast saying, oh God, this sounds terrible, I don't want to do short-term rentals as a result. No, it's just build up a good Rolodex
Yeah.
and have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different people that
Backups.
could, lots of backups. You need lots of
Mm-hmm.
backups.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially a place like, Joshua Tree, because, it's not hugely populated area. So I'm guessing that help is sometimes difficult because either if they don't live there, you're asking people to drive out there, right?
True. But yeah, I want to reiterate what you just said. Despite those negative points, 100% I'm all in with the short-term rental there and elsewhere. I just think it's a great business. I love being a host. It's part of my DNA in my regular life too, which I can get to later. And just keeping, trying to create a good experience and communication and being helpful. Like I love people and making people happy in general. So, it's rewarding and sharing my design, since the design was a part of the experience for my guests. And I'm a very big attention to detail person. And it's rewarding when I have guests comment but they love the 150 record collection or like the pieces of art or the little touches. I spent a lot of time curating the space and the environment indoors and out. So it's nice to
Yeah.
share it.
I want to hear a little bit more about the design work, because going into the short-term rental properties, it's very different from designing your own personal residence, where you're really like articulating your own taste and it's an expression of yourself. With the
Hmm.
short-term rentals, you're designing to make the experience better for somebody else, somebody you don't even know.
Right.
What? Tell me a little bit of the design work that you put in into your properties, and what the guests get out of it.
Yeah. So, having been to a bunch of Airbnbs before I had mine, I liked having more in the space than some Airbnbs are just very bare. And I think you feel that if there's not any character or charm or personality of the owners or the location. So I mean, even just down to like my book collection, I very carefully pick out what books are there. And I think they're interesting, even if someone doesn't ever read them. If they just want to take some time to like peruse the library, I think the books are really interesting, and down to that. Or I have, a lot of games that I supply for people, and I'm a big game player too. We have game nights at our house. So, and then again, I have a lot of records. I think there's about 150 records at the one house. And yeah, the art was carefully selected, and all in relation to the environment. So there's like, think, kind of some Navajo. That house has kind of a Navajo vibe. Things I found at like the local flea market. Yeah, so I just try to, and again, comfortable beds, very comfortable beds and beddings. I mean, I started off with like frette linens. I like really nice. I ended up dropping down a notch because somebody stained them and ruined them, and you obviously have to keep replacing them. But I try to maintain like a very high level in that aspect. Yeah. And then all the things, so, out there, everyone, you have a hot tub, you have a cowboy tub. One thing I'm proud of is I designed a mural as a backdrop for the cowboy tub at the Indio House. And it was a big process. It was based off of like a Navajo rug. I don't know if it's a rug or just a fabric tapestry that I have framed in the house. So I took the element of that design, blew it up, transformed it a little bit, related to those colors. I mean, it's a whole process picking up the colors and testing them and then making it, I don't know how big it is, 15 feet long or something. And my fiance and I like spending the time with a laser painting that. And I think that adds a lot. I think all those little things help the experience for the guests. And they know that there's so much to take in. And I like that. Interesting pottery, everything.
The level of design work that you put into it, obviously it's a labor of love with this property, and it's a great investment too. Are those table stakes in Joshua Tree? Like, does everybody have this level of detail with the art that they're putting in their properties, or do you really feel like this sets your property apart from the others?
I think when I first started my house, it was maybe slightly more unique. But my God, that area has gotten very oversaturated. I mean, it's been written up everywhere, and people have come in, with, everything behind them, way more money than I had. And I haven't paid attention necessarily to the art and everything, but certainly the house itself and a lot of the design is, off the hook, incredible. It's hard to compete when people are coming in at that level. I mean, I could, but I don't think it's necessary to put that in. But I think I'm still holding my own, maybe with the details, with the interesting eclectic art and accessories and all those little things. But certainly I will admit my house now is, dropped compared to some of the extravagance that's happening out there right now. My other house, Good Ranch that I call it, which isn't ready yet, is a big step up from Indio House, I think, in terms of just a little bit more high end in every way, but still probably not holding a candle to some of these like incredible homes that are, well over $1 million, even $2 million now. But yeah, I still think my design is strong, just the design element, but like the architecture and stuff has gotten absolutely fabulous out there.
I think it's important that you identify that though. And like as hosts and owners, I mean, we own properties as well. We're trying to continue to upgrade our properties smartly, right? Like you want to invest in the areas that will have a return in terms of a better average daily rate, or bring satisfaction to yourself if you happen to use the property. I mean, like we use all of our properties as well. So sometimes there are
Same.
things that we do that we just like because we want to do that. But, there's definitely some upgrades that we've considered that I said, I'm not sure when I'd get paid back with this upgrade. So let me kind of table that until I need to do something along that line. So just having that level of awareness like you do, I think is important as an owner, because if you purchased this property 7 years ago, you've probably done very well, with the appreciation over the time. And you've had all this great income coming in over the years, and you've built up such a great profile. These are amazing benefits of owning short-term rentals, and people that listen to this podcast is a whole variety of folks that are considering buying, or people that already own their properties. But, I will take it any day of the week if I could say I've operated for 7 years and now I have a property that has 300 amazing reviews, still looks fantastic, and still is competing. I mean, look at how much value you've added to that property, just by the scope of operating it and having all these guests coming through.
100%. We renovated the bathroom. There's one bathroom in that Indio house, so that was brand new. We still have plans at some point. I want to like open up the kitchen, full gut renovation with like bar seating, which I don't have now. And then we're going to add a master bath and have 2 baths, and that will open up with an indoor-outdoor shower. We have a lot of plans for that house. So it's fun. It's not, like I said, it's not necessary right at this moment. I do try, like I just had to get a new dishwasher. There's always something, right? I added a new hot tub. I added that cowboy tub. I added a concrete pad with a fire pit, that mural. But yeah, I mean, I like doing design anyway, so maybe I'm not your typical person because I like live for renovations. So it's just, again, part of my DNA. But yeah, I think every owner has to pick their balance of what, you need to like set your house apart or make sure it's doing well with also like overspending. Um, yeah.
I mean, that's one aspect of the business that I like. That this is a puzzle. We're trying to come up with the best, most guest friendly design that we possibly can, without having an unlimited budget or without really cheating the
Hmm.
system by getting in that way. But I'll echo your sentiment that the market has gotten a lot more competitive over the past 10 years.
Hmm.
Guest expectations have gone up, and just the competition is getting tougher. So incremental design changes to the design, I think, are necessary. Otherwise people will fall behind, but also
Hmm.
just increasing the guest experience too. Do you have any is there anything you do to heighten the guest experience, or any advice that you'd have to other short-term rental owners to give the guests the best experience they can?
Um, there's lots of things from in today's world. Like I added the Tesla electric charger, like so everybody wants that. So that's like an upgrade that would enhance a lot of guest experience. I think, you know, uh, I just thought of something else. Another thing is even just the communication. Like I offer access to a masseuse if they like, or other. I'm very on my welcome book, just my list of, and people do this, but I think it's important to keep updating like restaurants that I like with descriptions. If people aren't familiar with the area, I think that's so helpful. And as a guest, I appreciate that. I'm always there. I make it very clear, call me anytime. Like I'm so happy to help the guest experience anything they need. If they want a chef, yoga, shop that they like, which hikes in Joshua Tree Park. So I think that's another aspect that doesn't involve money, but that definitely enhances the guest experience. And I could tell that I make the experience personal, and then the responses I get in the guest book or notes about how much they appreciated that help. I think that's a huge part of the guest experience, as opposed to an Airbnb guest that you just never hear from. And I think that can help set you apart, and especially a market like Joshua Tree where it is so oversaturated, where it's just exploded. So anything from a literal physical element in the house to from the charger to a renovation. But I think on the flip side, communication and like personal hands-on, uh, attention.
It's interesting to hear all those recommendations because I do envision people going to Joshua Tree to, reconnect with nature, reconnect with themselves, enjoy
Hmm.
time with friends if they're going to travel with those friends. I've seen some of the photos, like your cowboy pool, your hot tub. I'm sure the sunsets are spectacular for people sitting in
Incredible.
them. I think it's like that's probably why a lot of people are going there. We do recommendations at our properties as well in New Hampshire and in Provincetown, and we have a really great recommendation interactive guide that we have for all of our properties that we
Right.
co-host.
It's great.
P-Town's it's an interesting place in that most people are out and about, right? So it's like you're going to P-Town,
Hmm.
you're going to the party, you're going to the restaurants, you're going to the shows, and the shows do change all the time. There's a couple hikes and a couple outdoor things that you can do because it is the national seashore. And people tend to find their way to those places. But a place like Joshua Tree that is just has natural beauty
Hmm.
where folks might be saying, I want to go to Joshua Tree, but I have no knowledge of what to do here. They're going to rely on a host to make those recommendations.
100%.
Even in New Hampshire, I mean, I'd say, Rory, a lot of our guests are working in the area, and they're either vacationing or they're working or they're visiting family or they're there for a graduation, there for a wedding. You guys probably don't have a lot of that in Joshua Tree. Like people probably aren't there to work for an extended period of time or to visit their
Yeah.
family there. It's like that is the destination, right?
Aside from, yeah, some photo shoots and there's some recordings. Yeah. So, I mean, some writers maybe come to write. I think that's a popular thing to do because it's so peaceful and quiet. But yes, it's more leisure to see the park. I mean, it's one of the best national parks. There are a lot of weddings out there. So I have people coming to like, you know, they're guests and they're looking for a location to stay. But
Now, one other thing you mentioned before we started recording is that the house that you're in right now, the house where you live, you
Hmm.
also short-term rent that when you're not using that property.
Exactly.
Tell us a bit about what that process is like to get it ready for guests, depersonalize it. Like, what is the transformation like?
Right. So I originally planned on short-term renting this house. So, and it's not me to have like a lot of personal photos up. I used to do that, but I haven't done it in a long time. So I don't really have any personalization. The only thing is I buy that special tape. So some private drawers or just things I don't want people to go into, I put that. There's a special tape you could buy that you could tell if someone pulls it off. So I'll put that up on some cabinets so I could tell if somebody went in them. Other than that, I just clear out my clothes and put them in a locked closet I have in the garage. And then I maybe like my jewelry box. I don't, it's otherwise I'm pretty open book. So it's very easy. The only other thing is I do need a property manager because if I'm leaving early in the morning to get on a plane or drive somewhere, I don't have time to change all the bedding and clean the house. So I have backup bedding and all those supplies and a cleaning team with a management property that's familiar. So they get everything ready, but I have it set up super easy. So it's kind of fluid.
Yeah. So tell us about the design work you're doing. Are you doing this for other clients as well, like other short-term rental owners, or are you working with, you know, people at the primary residences?
Yeah, 99% primary residences. I had one client, I did their primary residence, and then they asked me to do their Joshua Tree house. So I did that. There's actually two Joshua Tree clients that I've had. No more. Yeah, two interior everything, and then two clients I just did, or three. I did their landscape. They just hired me just for exterior landscape design. But mostly I do, full time residents.
What's some advice you can give to people that are maybe just getting started in short-term rentals from a design perspective?
Um, well, it would be my design perspective, even if you weren't renting it. I mean, I like clean, organic, modern. I don't like a lot of clutter, especially though for a short-term rental. I mean, you want people to not feel like invaded or uncomfortable with any of your personal belongings or too much of even impersonal belongings. You want them to feel like the space is theirs as well and that they're comfortable. You don't want to bombard them with too much. So I think, but at the same time, I was sharing with you earlier, to go into an Airbnb that is just bare doesn't feel good either. Then it feels just like a cheap motel or hotel room. And I think the beauty of Airbnb is that you're hopefully in a little bit more of an environment and you get some character and charm that a hotel also can't afford, to offer, not afford monetarily, but that they just don't offer. So I think keeping things minimal, but adding character and, different accessories, like I mentioned, like I think it's to have a game collection, some interesting books, records. Those are like no brainers that I do in every property. So those type of things, like a hammock people like, or the hot tub, and some people have outdoor games, anything that can increase their experience without feeling like the too much of personality of the owner. You don't want them to like feel that over the head.
We too have a record collection at one of our short-term rentals, and Rory, we just had a guest that commented on it, and they said one of the reasons why they booked it is because they saw that we had a record collection and they wanted to kind of like pour through it and enjoy it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was our smallest place. There were two people there. It was a woman and her caregiver who booked it, and oddly enough, we have a house. We have two houses right next door to this one. We have one that sleeps 14 people right next door to it, which is brand new, built from the ground up.
Right.
And we actually offered that up to her instead of the one that she was at because we had some long-term guests that wanted to stay an extra couple of days. And I said, oh, maybe these guests will want to go to the bigger house and enjoy that. And they actually said, no, I think we want to book this one because this is the one that we actually wanted to book and we want to listen to your records. And so they stayed there, and they had a great time, and they commented on it in their review. And I guess the
Yeah.
moral is you never know specifically what that thing is that people want when they book your property.
Hmm.
And that was it. And I offered up the big luxury place next door for like the same price. I was like, hey, just
Wow.
last minute switch, it's available if you want to go there instead. And they actually said no, and I was surprised.
Huh. Yeah. I think, like I said, most people comment on the record collection because it's a lot, and I DJ also, so music's like a big part of me, and I like all kinds of music. So I think, there's something about being on a vacation, and that analog experience of a stereo. Because my thing is, when I have friends over that house, when I go to that house, people take turns. The guests take turns. So one person picks out a record, and I even have like a little shelf that says now playing, so everybody could see what's playing. And then they're in charge of flipping the record. And you don't listen to a whole album anymore. It's so rare. And there's something very relaxing about that because everything is so quick paced right now. I've become ADD. I don't think I used to be. I literally think I developed with Instagram or something. And to be able to like sit and just enjoy the beauty out there and listen to a whole record, there's something about it that really calms the nerves. And it feels like vacation. And if at this house you can make a fire, and it's just, I like to make sure that if they don't want to leave, that they can feel so satisfied just being in the house with these simple pleasures.
Creates memories, and that's
Hmm.
the business that we're in. These are people that are maybe one of the days that they were on that vacation at your property, they enjoyed dinner at home with some drinks, watching the sunset, listening to records. As
Yeah.
simple of an activity as that is, everyone's going to remember it.
Hmm.
Next door at that larger property, we decided to bring up my entire CD collection and leave it there. And
Love
granted,
it.
all the jewel cases are gone because when I moved to Boston, I was in the radio business for a long time. So I have like 2,500 CDs, right? Tons and tons of
Are
CDs.
those albums behind you?
These are, yeah. So some of
Yeah.
these are some of the the artwork of the CDs that I had autographed, like when I was on the radio. Like some of these
Oh,
artists
great.
came into the studio and I interviewed like Sheryl Crow and Live and Belly. They're from the Northeast. A lot of great artists that came through our radio station. So
Amazing.
I took them out of our basement because they were literally sitting in binders in my basement, and I said, let's just put them in this property. So I actually had I had a cabinet commissioned where someone did an art project where they decoupaged, I think is what it's called, the cover artwork from some of the CDs that I selected on top of this cabinet. And if you look at the cabinet on our Airbnb listing, it's all this like retro music from the 90s and 2000s. And inside are all the albums that have the CDs there. And I have all the
That's
artwork
great.
in a like a boxes underneath it. And I said to myself, it's just sitting in my basement. Like this is something that I physically have that I don't listen to anymore because I listen to Spotify for everything.
Hmm.
Why not put this in one of the properties and maybe some people will find some enjoyment out of it? And that's what's happened. I kind of wish I still had all the jewel cases so I could have done like a massive wall of CDs. Because you mentioned books earlier. I think that media, books, records, CDs, we all have that as part of our identity. I mean, think back in the day in school, you'd go into a dorm room or your friend's place and you'd check out their CD collection from the little binder, the side
Hmm.
of all those CDs. Same thing with records, same thing with books. You curated your books. And I think that you probably put a lot of thought into the titles so people can get a sense as to who you might be as a person.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with music. So we were glad to put that in that property. We thought it was a nice addition. And it's interesting to hear that you're kind of having that same conclusion with some of your guests.
Yes, absolutely.
So, just to wrap things up, I do want to ask one final question, which
Okay.
is there anything that you have learned along the way that you wish you knew when you started with your short term rentals?
Hmm. Um, I don't know if I could think of that fast enough. There's probably a lot of things. Uh, I don't know. I can't think of anything. I think overall I've been lucky. It's been an incredible experience. I have had a few guest doozies. Um,
As we all
nothing,
have.
nothing that like monetarily or like physically where the damage has been just off the hook or anything, but I have had some problems, but nothing that holds a candle to the overall great experience. So nothing's glaring that I would do differently. Luckily, yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, that means that you're doing everything right, and you're just going to keep pushing forward. And, we all hear about the horror stories. We try not to highlight those that much, because it's just like an umpire. You remember the call they missed, not all the 99 that they got right, so all the guests that we get right are the great reviews that we all have, just like you have. So your website is dredesign.co. Is that how people could reach out to you if they want to learn more about you and the design work that you do?
That is, or Instagram. It's a lot more, constant posting and more stories at this point. But I think Instagram, which is Dre_design_. But you can access that also through dredesign.co.
We'll link to that in the show notes, along with a link to your short-term rental property in Joshua Tree. If you are hearing this and you want to stay there, what's the name of the property again?
That one's called Indio House, and very, very soon, Good Ranch will also be available, which is a very kind of, I call it like a very decadent, oversized 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So we call it like a oversized boutique hotel room with a huge outdoor space. Well, everything's kind of giant size. Yeah.
We can't wait to see the final design work on that property once it finally goes live.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us today. Rory, thank you for joining us. If people want to learn more about you, Rory, what's the best thing to do?
If you remember my name, go to rorygill.com, or if you want to check out my law firm, urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can hear more of them on smartstayshow.com. You could download and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify and YouTube. Tell your friends about our show. Dre, thank you so much for appearing.
Thank you both.
We'll look forward to watching you design this other property and have it blossom and become yet another guest favorite on your profile at Airbnb.
Thank you. Maybe I'll get one of you or both of you to come stay there at some point. Would be great.
That sounds like a deal. I think we have an invite, Rory.
Let's do it. Okay.
All right. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.